storytelling video ever. So, True Thomas the Storyteller. I've been a professional storyteller for about 25 to 30 years, give or take. And by professional, I actually get paid for it. Schools, museums, Renaissance fairs, you name it, I've done it. Anything that could happen to a storyteller has happened to me. Especially when I tell stories for folks like you and do events like this where you, at fair or things like that, where you could have a herd of drunken orcs come stomping through your set, or cannons going off, the queen parading by, or horses going crazy and running out. So believe me, when I say been there, done that, seen it, I speak from the heart. What I am very happy to say is you guys are here because you get it. WyrdCon is about storytelling. Society, civilization, is about storytelling. And I'm going to make a believer out of all of you. If you're not already a believer, you're going to be a believer by the time you leave this class. I am, how shall I say it, a storytelling evangelist. I believe, and you will believe. So, first of all, I'm going to just ask you guys to, were you guys going to be interactive and, you know, unlike your Facebook, when we poke each other, it will be in real life. But, and if nobody wants to be poked, that's fine too. But unlike your television set, when a storyteller is telling a story, he's interactive. We are making that connection. I'll give you an example of one of the reasons why storytelling works. Milady, imagine, if you will, a dragon. A dragon in a huge cavern. The mountains of treasure, varnished and glimmering. Stalactites and stalagmites, water drip. In your mind, you can just make out the color of the flames licking out of that long crocodilian snout. What color are those flames, my lady?
Orange and blue and gold.
Excellent. My lady, that dragon, as a hobbit coming, obviously. That dragon, from the light flickering out of its mouth, the flames, no, please, please. From the light flickering out, you can just see the shape and the color of that dragon. What color is that dragon? Green. By the way, you can say green.
Green.
Yes.
Yes.
My lord, the light flickers back off of some of the shields and the busted swords of the paladins who went the wrong way. What color are the dragon's eyes? So here's a question for you. What color are your dragon's eyes?
They change.
Okay. What color are your dragon's flames?
They're red and orange.
Okay. What color is your dragon?
Red.
See, when we tell stories, the cool thing about stories is they are made up of what we bring to the table. And so when we talk about hideous old crone, our mind goes to Mrs. McGurdy in the 2nd grade, who's the most hideous and scary woman you have ever met in your life. Why is that important? Anybody want to take a guess? Why is it important that the stories are made up of what we bring to the story? I'm sorry?
It's relevant.
Ah! Extra brownie points, kisses, hugs. She said one of my absolute favorite words, and you're going to hear it all over. You're like psychic this morning. Exactly. As a matter of fact, my mantra as a storyteller is speaking to truth and relevance. Because of relevance, because of context. You see, if I show you a velociraptor, or, you know, a demon on the big screen, it doesn't mean anything to you. I mean, yes, it's scary, yes, you might remember it, but it isn't part of you. And so when we visualize, when we imagine, when we listen to a story, we build it and it is ours. And so when I tell a story of a dragon, everyone leaves with their own dragon. And that's the cool part of storytelling, is we hand over the information, and then the information comes into us and expands. And now it's part of something. It's part of us. It becomes part of that massive machinery that's running in the background. But I'm getting a little deep too fast. We'll back off a little bit. So, what I'm going to ask you guys to do is I'm going to go around the room and ask you to just introduce yourselves and just say, you know, brief, one of the things I'm interested in, and I will do my best to try to address it during the class, and if not, you'll all have my email. You can always email me. And I'm on Facebook constantly because I'm an addict. So, Lily.
I'm Jennifer Deere. I'm just interested in storytelling and how you approach it.
Excellent, excellent.
I'm Barry Evans. I teach sport and screenwriting and film, and I'm dying to hear what you have to say.
Excellent. I unfortunately must tell you a small fact about myself. I am a former Marine, and so I have a couple of notches in my hearing. So if you...
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's...
Because I can speak up.
Good, excellent. Be loud, be proud. In here we can use our outdoor voice. Everybody got that? You can run around, put peanut butter on the walls, we'll have it great. So... What am I going to look up in there? Anyway, so yeah, just go ahead and shout out the names and everything.
I'm Meg.
Meg.
And I'm here to learn the structure of the story and how to add the textures.
Textures.
Nice.
Now, I happen to have seen them in 2 classes earlier, or in a class earlier, and that was, I thought it went pretty well, don't you?
Excellent.
Excellent. My lady?
I'm Rosemary.
I've had a lot of technical reports.
Okay.
I'm Sarah Yoon from Storyteller Productions, and I love writing novels, but I'm also very bad at dialogue, which is something that I need to practice. So I love to hear.
Excellent. Excellent. So most of what I'm going to be teaching in this class is going to be about actual in-face storytelling, but this is it. You know how you see the jokes by geeks that, you know, the root, the source code, the root, this is where it all starts. Welcome to the root. All those people you see, VH1, the storytellers. Oh yeah? Let's put you in a room full of screaming 7-year-olds and see how well you do without your guitar. Yeah? You know, I will walk on stage and people will go, hey, where's all your gear? I have a mic. Oh, you're so lucky, we have to haul all this gear and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, really? Get 15 minutes into a story and forget where you are. No net. So.
I'm Rachel Duck. I'm also a part of Storyteller Productions, and I'm interested in the way that the way we tell stories, it shapes the world, because it shapes the way we see the world, and when a culture changes, when a culture believes a story, it changes the world, and that's the thought project that I'm working with.
Okay, so I've summoned Joseph Campbell from the dead, and he'll meet you in the hallway. No, absolutely, absolutely. What you're talking about is stuff that we could totally bring up, but and I'm going to address some of it, but I think you and I need to have a longer conversation involving many, many cups of coffee. In the time-honored tradition of our fathers. Lady.
I am Karen Keene, and I'm the third part of the Storyverse people who came to hang out with me
Jesus,
today.
I love you guys.
Thanks!
Storyteller powers, activate!
And my passion is mythology and fairy tales, and I'm really interested in looking at how the oral tradition was passed down and how it's influenced storytelling today. Even into you have the visual media that you were talking about, it shows people what happens, and I'm curious, I'm fascinated with how that is actually even informed by oral storytelling.
Oh, you were in the right place. My lady?
I'm Bethany, and I teach at a university, a technical subject, and I also am a park ranger in the summertime.
Cool.
And I feel like when I lecture people, it gets real boring, and I don't want to do that anymore. So.
Yes. Okay, so just so you know, there are a million aspects of how storytelling is being used. So one of the things in the park ranger program is the interpreter program. And some of the interpreters actually dress up in actual period costumes for the castles and forts that they're showing off. And it's really cool. I have a friend who's a interpreter for the tall ships down there in San Diego. And she's, a sailor on the ship, showing people around, and she gets to light off cannons, and every so often I'll see a post by her on Facebook. Today, I scared 15 million children and blew off some cannons. I'm like, woo! But just to give you an example, just a huge range, the range of storytelling, all the way from media in Hollywood, because what is a pitch session but storytelling, to writing novels, because at some point you're in the elevator with, I don't know, some agent going, well, my book is kind of like, Harry Dresden, but as a cat. Right? And that's just the hook. But the thing is now you're talking stories, but to working in hospices, doing healing stories, right? To working with pretty much in business, in health, in science, in every aspect of pretty much any of humans' endeavors, there is an aspect where storytelling can be the secret sauce. Why? Because communication is one of the most fundamental things that human beings do. From the minute a caveman came running came running to a cave and went, "Ah, ah, ah." Hello, communication. Don't go outside, there's a cave bear, he will eat your head. And the person listening went, "Grr." Hello, communication, message received. And he imagined that cave bear eating his head. And the best part is he passed on that story. And I'm not even using any words, but I'm getting it across, aren't I? And so even from that very, and do you know how we know storytelling works? Because we're here. If he hadn't listened to her, if he hadn't listened, it would be over. But because we learned this wonderful thing about communication, words, and we're going to string them together, we're going to make stories. We lived, we created civilizations. We created rooms where people share stories. It's a cool thing.
Hi, I'm Heather. I'm an English student here with Enigma at UCI, and I'm most interested in learning how to create character orally.
Ooh, okay.
I'm Alejandro. I'm also here with Enigma at UCI. I do creative nonfiction blog posts.
Excellent.
I'm Jocelyn. I'm running registration downstairs. And I'm here to expand my knowledge base and maybe get some new tools for my character development for my large characters.
Ooh, okay. So, just so you know, anybody can be a storyteller. We are all storytellers. We all tell stories as part of our day-to-day lives. To become a master storyteller takes a lifetime. Okay? It is something that at first seems as simple as water. And then we realize the entire planet is covered with water. And there's a million different kinds of water. There's frozen water, and there's steaming water, and all these different variations. Congratulations, welcome to storytelling. I promise you, no matter how deep you dig, there will be more. You can take it wherever you want to go. But what I'm hoping to do is pass on a few tools to you and a few things that you can use and go, maybe I need to tell a story here. Maybe or you don't necessarily need to phrase that. Maybe you just say, and this is how we're going to do this. Because if you tell somebody, would you like to listen to a story? They're start looking at their watch. It's very funny. I'm in the SCA, the Society of Creative Anachronisms, proud member. And in the SCA, we have things called wars. And the wars are, oh, I don't know, 5 to 10,000 of your favorite friends all getting together, dressing up in very period costumes. Think fair, but without prices, or I mean without customers. You're just doing it for each other. And they beat the snot out of each other during the day and do all sorts of amazing crafty stuff. And then at night, parties. And over there, the Vikings are partying, and over there, the Romans are partying, and it's a great time. You know what I love to do? Tell stories. I wander up to a fire and say, my lord, my lady, I am Thomas Whiteheart. I am a poor, humble storyteller, and I was wondering if you'd like some entertainment. And a lot of them go, let me just do a few things and I'll leave you alone. An hour later. And they're like, what? You just started. The reason is, when you start telling stories, what do you think happens to the human brain?
Stops watching time and starts imagining things.
Exactly. We go to the place of imagining. We go to the place of visualizing. And that's the first thing. How many of us have worked with kids? When you talk to a kid and you go, you start telling them a story. The itsy bitsy spider. Their brain is literally going, now we're in that mode. Guess what? Human beings crave that mode. We so desire being in that mode. It is part of the component of religion, which that had a small effect on civilization. It is part of all entertainment. We want to be in that mode. And storytelling is probably one of the fastest ways to do it. They say the father of all the arts is storytelling and the mother is dance. Because if you think about it, interpretive dance. Really? Take those two things together and you've got pretty much most modalities of communication. And then those two got together and they had a baby and its name was music and rhythm, and the family got big quick. So, well, first of all, thank you guys all for being here. Give yourselves a round of applause. This is going to be an interactive class, and I'm going to hand you some very thick handouts, which, I would like to introduce my lovely lady, Kat Ellen. She's an instructor as well. She teaches all sorts of crafty fiber textile stuff, and she's also a ATS belly dance instructor.
Very cool. Thank you. Belly dance is found youth. Just saying.
I'm a very good attitude towards belly dancing. It's very cool.
And I will need one of those.
But you had this one for the new one, so I don't know if that was separate.
All right. Oh, this is, wait.
That was on the bottom.
Okay, yeah, this is not that.
Okay, good. That's why I didn't hand it out.
So just so you know, I can teach an entire weekend on storytelling. And people who are into storytelling do that, but we're not going to have, we don't have an entire weekend. So I'm going to kind of try to cram a lot of stuff in. So we've got the fact that storytelling is communication, right?
Yes.
All right. A story, as we define a story, is generally beginning, middle, and end. It has a structure. There's a reason for that. Our brains need it. When we don't have, wait, where am I? Wrong beginning. What happened? Wrong ending. Beginning, middle, and end. We need to get that in order because that's the way our 2 + 2 = or apple or frog or whatever. Because you've got to remember, we deal with storytelling, and so it can be an utter lie and still be completely truthful. You'll see what I mean. So, I want to talk, and you guys are going to get a little bit of the speech from yesterday. I'm going to talk a little bit about the storytelling brain. How many of us have gone out and done, worked a 24 or 48 hour day until the point where we're close to hallucinating? Yeah, you just put your hand down. We'll just assume. How, you know, those massive long car trips, you're going across country, and by the end of, you know, there's a purple frog talking to you, and that's completely normal. When they torture people in, the various prison camps throughout history, one of the things they do is they do sleep deprivation. We as human beings absorb information constantly. When they put people in the sensory deprivation tanks, where you're just there alone with that little spark that is you in the dark, you freak out because now this entire world of information is gone. Alone in the dark. The minute we wake up, all our lives, tactile, smell. And there are, 12 senses? Sense of balance, sense of body. There are other senses besides the 5 that we all know and love. So, all that information is coming in. And our brain is paying attention to it. Important, important. When all that information is coming in, we can't deal with it all. It's too much. If I noticed that this young lady, kept reaching for a suspicious object near her purse, and I kind of look over here, and I notice that it's shaped like a gun or something, my brain at first goes, oh, she keeps reaching over here. Wait a second. There's something strangely looking like a gun over there. And then the other part of me goes, okay, I'm going to start moving away from her. Our brain is making priority decisions. Every time we walk up and talk to somebody, there's a million decisions. Is she young? Is she old? Is it he? Is it a her? Is it... All these millions of decisions are going on. And so our brain doesn't have time to look at every bit of sensory information coming in. Can't do it. But it's all there. And it's swimming past. And as the day goes on, we start to get overloaded. And more overloaded. And more overloaded. And a lot of times we don't have the time to sit down and just let our brains cool off for a second, because our processes are way overclocked. Well, when we sleep, that other part of our brain kicks in. The symbolic brain, the imagining brain, the relevance brain. And that brain goes, wow, you've been busy today. Oh, you're having problems with your boss. Well, your boss is a bunny rabbit. And we're going to put him in a tutu. And he's on a skateboard. And there's a large, giant albatross chasing him. And, and for whatever reason, in symbolic language, this all makes sense. But it's an equation. It's your brain going through and trying to figure things out. It's exercising and going, trying to figure things out. And then when you start to wake up in the morning, sometimes your brain goes, oh, the problem you're having with your boss? And it throws it over the wall into your conscious brain, and your conscious brain goes, I just need to walk up and ask him. And you're like, why didn't I think of this all before? That's because the other side of your brain was like, duh. Storytelling works a lot like that. They believe that human beings have gone through 5 paradigm shifts on how we interpret information. In early man, when we saw a face in the forest, we looked up and we saw, there's a face in the forest. That must be the forest face. That is the horse god. Hello, horse god. Good morning. And off you went. We didn't make distinctions between reality and imagination the way we do today. That's more of a Western thing. So what happens when we tell stories is we are reaching into both sides of those brains. And when Jack runs into an old woman, and she looks poor, pitiful, and hungry, and he gives her half of his bread, she starts to eat it. And then she says, there's a giant over there, and he's going to eat you. And you go, good to know. But in the well, there's a giant killing sword. Well, in that story, in just that little piece, there are so many messages. A, there are giants in the area. B, old people know stuff. C, it's good to be good to other people. They will hook you up. Giant killing swords are a useful thing. All that information is traveling. Yeah. All that information is traveling in just that little thing. But our conscious mind doesn't go, oh look, no, it's the symbolic brain going, duh! And that's where we in storytelling have that amazing power. We get to peel the wall back and archetypes, myths, motifs, all that stuff is spinning and gaining power and running. Stories are our version of encrypted files. We tell a story, it goes into our head and goes. Now sometimes those encrypted files have viruses. And some memes, anybody? But sometimes those files, we don't necessarily know what's going on in that story. We just, for 3 days later, like, what was, oh man, Okay. So that's talking about the storytelling brain. And the storytelling brain means human beings evolved to live and tell stories, to listen and tell stories. Everybody got that? Let me hear you say, yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. So, how many of you have heard of King Arthur? Okay. King Arthur in Cornwall, the original King Arthur, there may have been a couple of them. Chainmail, if he had that, not glorious plate. He's about 5th century. Arthur, son of Uther. Arthur, the great bear. In a cave not far from Tintagel, archaeologists found a cave bear skull. And that cave bear skull had its bones crossed and in its mouth a form of magic saying, we use your power against you. And it had been decorated with dried flowers. That cave bear was there thousands of years before even the legend of King Arthur came along. And then we had Arthur, the son of Arthur, great bear. That symbolic motif, that symbol came into King Arthur. And that gave us all the legends like Excalibur, which originally was called Calichol. And Excalibur went on to become a casino in Las Vegas. And we have cars that say Avalon, right? The land of apples. All around us, these little things bubble up. And as a storyteller, you go, aha! Aha, see, geeks are cool. It flows around us. So, I'm going to flip to the next page here. Some of the names of storytellers. Bard, Scop, Shawnee, Ohanishi, Obasan, Griot, Cantadora, Troubadour, Biwa, Hoshi, Kavarda, Cadentes, Sagatar, Kutosa, Setoba. Oh, sorry. And that's why you have minions. Thank you, sweetie. Kurtosa, Zatoba, Cana, every culture had storytellers. And if you wanted to destroy a culture, the first thing you did was you killed the storytellers. We don't realize it today, and we have storytellers, but back before modern media took on, one of the primary ways of shaping civilization and changing civilization was done by people who knew the power of storytelling. Jesus Christ, Buddha, Mark Twain, Abraham Lincoln, Albert Einstein, Jim Henson, Disney. All these people knew the power of storytelling. And these abilities, and if you want to talk the dark side of the art, Adolf Hitler. There's a Sith Lord for you. In Hebrew tradition, There's the very bad story of the blood lie. Essentially that you needed the blood of Christian babies to make matzah bread. And that passed on into the various places, the ghettos throughout the Middle Ages, and people would hear that and say, oh, we're going to trash them. And what was that to do? That was the dark side of the force. And of course, the Hebrew tradition also had great stories, like the story of the Golem of Prague, who rose up to trash that lie and gave us great magical characters that we use in science fiction and fantasy today. So, as we see storytellers, there is a power both for good and for bad. And it is effective. It's not just for professionals, by the way. Anybody can tell stories. I've sat at kitchen tables and heard little grandmothers and truckers, and you wouldn't believe, you will sit down with people and they will tell you stories, and it's like, I could sit here and, look, the sign of a good story. My day is gone. How many of you have had a great storyteller in your life? People who told you great stories. Who was a good storyteller for you?
Carrie Brewer.
Oh, excellent. How about you?
Tom Lang.
Tom Lang?
Tom Lang.
Is who is
That is a good friend of mine.
excellent?
My grandfather.
Oh, now did he tell you any particular tradition of stories, or was it just life stories?
I think it's my stories, but he took creative liberties with a lot of them.
That's the best part. And you?
Oh, I'm sure I've had many.
How about you?
Well, my mom, actually.
Oh, your mom was a great storyteller? Excellent. You know, one of the things that is truly sad is when you go to a yard sale or something, or a flea market, and you see a box full of photos, and you look at that box and nobody knows who they are, and there's all these people buy old cars and wearing cool clothes, and you're wondering, oh, where did these stories go? One of the saddest things in the world is to not carry on and pass on a story. Lady,
My father.
is he a great storyteller? Excellent.
Reading a lot of like C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien.
But any people?
People? My parents mostly read to us a lot, so they just pass on the stories that have been written down.
Yeah, but they had that ability to tell a story, to make it live in your head, so that's pretty cool.
My dad would add little bits in,
Yes.
was it Robinson Crusoe? No. So it's just him. I don't know, it would add things like chocolate milk cows.
Oh, yes.
Sure we're paying attention.
Absolutely, and by the way, should you ever run into the situation where you're reading Sandra Boynton books, they can almost always be sung. I prefer reggae myself, that works really well. But I have to tell you, almost all the kids' literature can be sung. And that's a great way to get a kid into the story. I was telling stories to my son, RJ. He's the kid you see running around here with the purple hair, about my size, shy, very, very shy. But storyteller for you? Uncle, excellent. Anybody outside of your immediate family who's a great storyteller for you?
Outside?
Yeah, people you've met in your life?
Yes, that's trained by a lifelong Norwegian.
Ah! I love Scandinavian fests. Cleanest fest you've ever been to. You know, you get, I perform and I do traditional Norse myths at a couple, the Sons of Norway have decided they like me. You know, so I have, so I go and there's all these little tiny Lutheran ladies that come over and go, oh yeah, sure, up there in Minnesota, you know. And I'm from Minnesota, so it's not a problem. I speak the language. Lady, any storytellers in
I
your life?
seek to surround myself with people who love story, but if I had to pick one, I would say Jenny Wingfield, who's a screenwriter and a novelist, and a dear friend of mine, and she tells stories from a very rich childhood that inform her work and
And-
captivate me. And when
And it just seems to come naturally, doesn't it? It just flows.
She has this rich Southern voice, and she could probably, when she reads to me her work, it's overwhelming.
There's not a particular name, but I spent some time on it in a beach community in a little town, and they have fires on the beach in the summer, and they have storytellers for the children and families. Everybody gathers around on blankets, and storytelling happens then, and then s'mores.
Yes.
There you go. What more?
I get to imagine stuff and eat sugar.
Yeah. it's
Pretty much my happy spot in life. And what's really funny is if you tell stories and you like to get people involved in your stories, it will be amazing. You will get the biggest, roughest, toughest, scariest looking person to play a little tiny damsel in distress. I kid you not. And I've done this. There was a king in the SCA, and this guy was about this big, bald, intimidating as heck, and he was there with his 2 little kids, and I turned him into a little fairy princess, and he was on it. And people were falling off the logs. I'm like, dude, we're going on the road together. It was awesome. And I mean, that was a side of him. I mean, because I dress up in armor and fight, I'm like, right? I had no idea that was in him, but I see it over and over and over. It will just pop out. So anybody can tell stories. Look for stories. They will come to you. That's part of storyteller synchronicity. If your car breaks down and you're on your way to a garlic festival to tell stories, guess what? A garlic farmer will pick you up. Kid you not. People, storytelling synchronicity, the world conspires to help you tell your stories and to hear them. It's a little known fact. In Native American tradition, they don't say, here comes Jim, he's a great storyteller. They say, here comes some great stories and Jim's bringing them. Different way to look at it, huh? So, for instance, in the Norwegian countries, up there, the Nordic countries, any country where you have a lot of time, the cold, and tell us a story. It's freaking miserable outside. You see those countries, you have very rich storytelling traditions. A traditional Celtic bard knew 200 forms of meter and rhyme and can entertain for 3 months, never repeating himself once. It took 20 years to train them. You want to talk about the power of the mind just to remember stuff? In Japan, the Portuguese came in and Christianized a good chunk of the population. The shogun said, we're throwing everybody out. All the Westerners are going. And by the way, we're going to kill all the Christians. And they marched pretty much the whole population into boiling hot springs. Not a pretty thing. To find any remaining Christians, they took the Bible and they set it down and said, you step on it. And of course, the Christians wouldn't do it. Not a good thing. The remaining ones said, okay, to be caught with the Bible is a bad thing. And so they memorized the entire Portuguese Bible, a language that they were not fluent in, but they memorized it and passed it on for several generations. That, in a language you don't speak, and they could recite it from memory. The human brain has fantastic abilities if you are in that mindset, if you are in a culture where that is part of your culture. So you may have problems remembering what you had for breakfast, but I tell you that our brains are capable of storing amazing amounts of information. And one of the cool things about being a storyteller is when you tell the story, when we talk about dragons, or for instance, let's talk Star Wars, okay? We're watching Star Wars number 4, aka 1, and there's Darth Vader coming onto the ship. There's Leia, shooting stormtroopers. When we tell that story, we can visualize it in our head and tell what we see. Now, some people, believe it or not, hear stories, and for them it's all audio. Some people it's all visual. Some people it's a mix of everything. But the cool thing is you're just playing that movie back in your head. And so when you're telling the story of Jack the Giant Killer, you're actually seeing the story in your head and relating what you're seeing. With things like archetypes, metaphors, and all that sort of stuff, we're dealing with all the power that's running in that encrypted file in the background, the symbolic language. There are different kinds of stories. And so, for instance, some of you guys mentioned personal stories, like your father, your father was saying that, doing not quite necessarily true, but interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So there are personal stories and there are shared stories, okay? When we talk about, and there's a whole bunch of different kinds of categories, but I'm going to talk about mostly folklore and mythology and everything in this class. There are a couple of origins of stories. One is monogenesis, and the idea is hey, it's a story whose time has come. And so, Cinderella, 100 spontaneous versions of Cinderella. There is a Dene, Navajo version of Cinderella called Turkey Girl. And it's a fairy god turkey, which is not just freaking rocks. So the girl, I heard one of the ladies who lived on the reservation tell this story, and she was a young lady, and she lived in a trailer with turkeys over her trailer. And boy, I'll tell you, when she did the, I swear to God, you thought that turkey was in the room with you. I mean, it was brilliant. So we have a story whose time has come that needs to be told. It just pops up. That story can now move. After a story is created, it moved, and that's how the two ways we tend to get stories. Polygenesis, poly meaning everywhere, genesis, creation. Transmigration. So this young lady hears a story, goes over to visit that young lady. She goes over and tells it to this person, who whispers it to him, and guess what? They were in 5 different countries. But I could tell you a story, a Celtic story, that tracks back all the way to Indo-European, ancient India, and goes back hundreds of years. Transmigration means that you hand me a story. Thank you. Oh, that's really nice, but it'd be better if it was purple. And I hand it to you, and he does what with it? And then he hands it to her. And we don't necessarily know that it's the same jacktail, right? Because it's changing, it's transmigrating. But the cool thing is as it moves, you could just put that in your bag if you want. It was funny, I did an improv class, and they said, okay, we're making objects, and so I made a cane. And as we were walking, and she said, okay, that's the end of the exercise. And I walked over and I put my cane against the wall and started to walk away. And she turned and looked at me and she said, aren't you an actor? And I said, no, I'm a storyteller. She said, I've never seen anybody take one of their invisible props and put it away. And I said, I'm a storyteller. I'm going to use that again. So, Jesus Christ, Mark Twain, Abe Lincoln, Buddha, Aesop, Jim Henson, Brothers Grimm, storytellers all. You guys starting to get the big picture here? Have I got the fundy part of this done? All right. So, transmigration and diffusion. Santa Claus. Our version of Santa Claus, the Coca-Cola Santa Claus. Does he look like a 5th century Turkish saint? Ooh. On the other hand, if you were to describe, I don't know, a person with a white beard who's being pulled by a flying magical creature who knows if you've been good or bad and lives up in Nordic countries and has no problem with, decorations hanging from trees, you might instead be talking about, Odin. Odin. Because, let's face it, where does St. Nicholas get off having all these relations with elves? Fairy folklore. Oh, hi, I'm a saint and I deal with angels and don't mind the elves. Really? On the other hand, Odin, not a problem. He's been working with the elves for years. As a a matter of fact, if you saw the last movie, he's had a few problems with the elves, the dark ones in particular. So, but what happens is St. Nicholas and Sinterklaas, and now it's in her purse. We are now in our lives experiencing the transformation and transfiguration and transmigration of stories all around us. Rudolph, 3,000 years from now, will probably be a saint or something. So let's talk about the kinds of stories. First of all, everybody get up and shake it off. There's apples and chocolate, and there's water back there underneath the sleeping AV tech. Don't disturb him. He's happy.
We worked them very hard.
Yes. Yes. Did you guys want to do an exercise real quick? Take something off? Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is, first of all, I should check my time.
I just checked it.
So that rat, I need to get more.
I like what you did there.
You were such a good person.
She is. Okay, I'm going to speed things up because I'm trying to cram a ton of stuff into this class. So first, if you're going to tell stories, you need to know where you're going with it. Thank you. You need to know where you are. You need to be able to know your space. Because if you're not comfortable, the immediate thing, everybody else will pick that up immediately. And it's sometimes, especially if you're nervous getting in front of people, that's a hard thing to do. So there are two things that I do that are kind of mind tricks. One of them is I borrow from martial arts, and I do just a little bit of stretching, Tai Chi / martial arts sort of thingy. And so I put my feet apart like this. I take a deep breath. I pull that energy up from the ground, and I pull it into my center. So I'm just going to, as I breathe in, I'm going to pull that energy out. And then I'm going to push it out. And I'm going to pull it in, and this time I'm going to bring it in through my nose. And I'm going to push it out through my nose. I'm just going to sway a little bit. I'm going to listen to the room, the hum of the lights. And keep my eyes closed, so I'm going to take another deep breath. And I would like you to just visualize, just take your hands and imagine you're pulling up that energy. And then you're going to focus it inside. So you have that ball of energy inside of you. And then we're going to roll our knees around a little bit. We're going to roll our hips around a little bit. Roll our shoulders. Pull your arms over to the side. We're going to take our heads and we're going to shake them around a little bit. And we're going to take another deep breath. And we're going to smile. All right, you guys are feeling a little more focused? So I'm going to ask you to sit down, and we're going to do, go ahead and sit down, and we're going to do a little exercise. And what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to pick a character from a fairy tale. Okay? So, Cinderella, Big Bad Wolf, any character you like. Pick a character. And actually, it could be, it doesn't even need to be a fairy tale. If you're stumped for fairy tales, pick a character from a movie. If you want to be Dr. Frankenfurter, right? Or Dr. Horrible, or what have you, pick a character. Okay? And I want you to just sit there and get in the skin. Now, imagine your character is just waking up in the morning. Close your eyes And now you're just waking up in the morning and you're looking around as that character. Go ahead and look around. You're in your house, cave, what have you. And now that character is going to get up and scratch. Go ahead and stand up. And you're going to start going around your morning ritual. So go ahead and start doing stuff as that character. So in my case, I'm the big bad wolf. And what I want you to do, you beat me to it, I want you to imagine your character going over there and brushing their teeth. Go ahead and look in the mirror if you're a vampire, pretend.
My character is Morph from Treasure Planet.
What would more? He can make them.
He can't.
Yes.
So he makes
Yeah. So go ahead and brush your teeth and look in the mirror. Well, Morph would mock somebody else.
Okay.
So I would stand next to him and there you go. Yeah. When you want to get into the heads of your characters, this is a really great exercise. And so let's say you've got 4 or 5 characters in your story. Just as an exercise, say you've got a story with 4 different characters, just get up and be them. Get in the skin. So another thing that as storytellers we get to do is we get to make all the crazy faces and all the crazy sounds. Okay? So when you're driving in your car and you're thinking about a story and you just want to play with it, you can just make all the weird sounds you want, just for the hell of it, in a car, and people will drive by and go. And that's okay. Yeah, that's okay because you're a storyteller. You're allowed to be weird. So, let's just start with loosening up the face. And then we're going to make some low sounds. And now we're going to bring it up. All right, now we're going to play with a little percussion. And then making sounds with our body. Scary monster noises. Wow. I think we know which direction you're going here. Okay, go ahead and have a seat. So, but the thing is do not be afraid to use yourself as your best prop. So if you want to, like, for instance, trip somebody out, and you're telling a story, and you're playing, kind of a Hannibal Lecter, scary person, a demon or something, when you tell the story, look at them like I am looking at you right now. And it will start to creep you out after a while. What? I have a teenage son. How's the line going? I've seen scarier things than you at my breakfast. Oh, weirder, sorry. So, no, what I was doing to her was I was just looking past her eye, just to the space immediate next to her. And that weirdness of when I look at you like that will trip them out. Because you'd be like, wait a second. And just that little moment of, do you realize that pretty much when you hear a story that most of what you're taking home is 70% meta language? 70%.
So it's the feeling that you're looking at them but up.
Exactly. Or another thing you could do is, for instance, I have a Japanese demon character that I tell, and she always ends her story with a breath. And so it'll be, but why would you want to go out into the woods? For it is cold out there. You know what happens in the cold. and people are like, and so it's just little tiny things like that And you could build a palette of it, and it will freak people out. Now, mind you, try them on your friends first. That's what they're for. You know, oh, I'm trying this character. And by the way, if you, one of the best things you can do is get together with other storytellers. Go to storytelling conventions, go to storytelling meetings, go to places where stories are told, and do it. So, I'm going to hammer through this real quick and move over to the toolbox so we don't fall asleep. Folk tales are fast and loose, and they're usually part of a specific area. So here's an interesting bit. I tell a story called The Fairy Pudding from I think it was written by T. Crofton Croker, but I'll have to check. Anyway, there's this beautiful character in it named Harry Collin. He's a fairy doctor. And the fairy doctor in the story comes up, he's running in and he says, "Blood and blunderbushes, what is you all sitting here for? There's an eclipse coming, and it's raining mother. Cross yourselves 4 times in the name of the 4 Mandra Marvins, for as the prophecy says, fill the pot at a supernaculum, a blazing stars are spectaculum. Go outside, the suns and the moons and high horrocks. Go outside." What was that all? But it was such a great bit of dialogue, I had to memorize it. And I suck at memorization. But I forced myself because it was just such a lovely bit of dialogue. And I went, how was that all about? Well, first of all, fairy doctors are insane. Anybody has anything to do with the fairies is insane. Because the fairies will lead you to a cool, clear puddle of water just to see the bubbles rise. They're not from around here. They don't know what cheese is. Okay? So, yeah, no, the reason they're called the good folk is because you don't want to have anything to do with them. That's the thing, you know. Tinkerbell, magical psoriasis, hi, la 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 la, 40,000 feet, bye. Yeah, she can be real vindictive if she chose to. But anyway, I was telling the story, the fairy pudding, and this old lady hops up to me and she says, "That part with the goddamn thunder bushes, do you know what that's all about?" And I said, "No." She said, "He's making fun of the Catholic Mass." I went, "What?" She said, "Yes, back in those days, the Mass was done with the priests with their back to the audience. And it was all done in Latin, and most people didn't understand any Latin. And so when he's saying, fill the pot edi supernaculum, he's saying, fill a patre. And he would have had the audience rolling in the aisles. And so that's something contextual to that part of the world that I would not have gotten had I not talked to that lady. And it was like, wow. You know that part in the zip file that you had no idea what that was all about? Congratulations, here's the rest of the explainer. So that's a folk tale. Wow, yeah. Fairy tales. By the way, there are very few actual fairies or elves in fairy tales. Fairy tales are very high contrast, and they're done in kind of an archetype form. There's the clever girl, the brave prince, and it's one of those kind of, we're going to do it all in block type and silhouettes. You get to fill it in. Then we have fables. A fable is kind of like a cross between a folk tale and a fairy tale, and they usually have some sort of wisdom or foolishness to pass on to kind of get you thinking. Myths. That's where the well gets deep. With myths, a lot of that is us trying to understand the world. And because we're humans and we only have ourselves to kind of go from the program, we take our attitudes and beliefs and everything and we project them on greater forces. And so Zeus, man has some issues. He gets around and, you know, that whole thing with the swan and the golden showers and all that kind of stuff. On the other hand, if you look at myths, you can tell a lot about the culture that gave birth to them. For instance, Thor, and I'm not talking your, you know, blonde hair, Chris Helmsley, he's pretty cut for a homeless guy, Thorial Mimbo Thor. I'm talking your old school Thor with the red hairy knuckles and the beer belly who has a hammer who destroys giants. That Thor, right, has to put on a wedding dress to get his hammer back. Loki, one of my favorite tricksters of all, has several horrible children, but, you know, in order to put a wall around Asgard, he kind of screws himself up, and he ends up being a mama to Sleipnir. Yeah, he turns himself into a mare, and because he has to attract a stallion so that, you know, this thing doesn't all go, and the stallion goes, I'm good looking. Off they go. 9 months later, Sleipnir, 8 legs. Yeah, My Little Pony, the Viking edition. Well, I don't think we're going to see many stories about Jesus Christ cross-dressing. Different cultures, but the Norse, hey, that was good storytelling. That's okay. Of course, they also think blood eagles and things like that are cool, so it tells you a lot about the culture. So myths are kind of us interpreting the greater forces and projecting ourselves on them and things about our culture. Legends. Legends generally are based around somebody. Real or imaginary, they may or may not have existed. King Arthur may have been 2 or 3 different people. Merlin may have been 2 or 3 different people. So when we have a legend, and we can go all the way up into modern times, you know, Steve Jobs, the legend. Bodies of folklore, or bodies of stories build around those people. So there's usually a person at the center of them, or some event. So, transmedia. What we're seeing here is a really good example of transmedia. We have videotape happening. We have pictures and audio happening. Downstairs, there are people talking about morgues and LARPs and ARGs and all this sort of stuff. And what is all this? This is storytelling being delivered in a different medium. But I promise you, if they don't get the story right, it doesn't matter what medium it's in, it's gonna suck. Hi, welcome. Hi there. We have chocolate and apples over there somewhere. So help yourself. Thank you. And welcome. Your name?
I'm Jason.
Hi, Jason. So what I want to tell you is that all these different types of storytelling, go ahead and take a look at this handout when you get a chance. And there's a ton of different information that we're not going to be able to go all the way through. But I will be glad to answer questions at any time. Okay. So I'm going to trade it. Ms. Cat?
Yes, I'll be back.
Thank you so much. Ms. Cat, can I borrow you for this hand? I hope I have enough handouts here. I'm cramming 2 classes into this 1 class. Now we're going to get into the actual physical of storytelling. And by the way, if you guys want to throw $1 on the Xerox fund, I won't say no. So, when we talk about a story, all stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And something has to happen in that story. Characters in a story help drive the story. They move the story along. And so when you're the big bad wolf brushing your teeth in the mirror, he's getting ready for something. He's going to go do something. And as long as you're in that character, that will help drive you along. When he runs into Little Red Riding Hood, who has a bunch of issues as well, there's going to be something that happens. And so characters are how we identify the story and how we make the story come to life. Some other things that characters do. They personify, they move the story along, they inform the story. You know, the character could say, well, I don't want to go over there. There are gnomes. Gnomes are vicious. Okay, they're passing on information. Characters can aid or hinder. So, like in Frozen, you have the singing snowman, Olaf. He's there to aid. And then you have other characters who might be there to hinder, like the Duke of Wesselton, if you guys have seen Frozen. Wesselton! So, where do characters live? Anybody want to take a shot at that without reading the page? Where do characters live?
They live in the story, but they also live in the heads of your audience.
Ooh, 2 good answers. I'm looking for one more. Where do characters live?
Either inside the world of the main character or outside of that. Like, I mean, because you have...
Characters live in us. in us. Got to get that one first. Why? Because my big bad wolf is different than her big bad wolf. So when we bring characters to life, each character has its own unique flavor. When we put that character in a story, we're going to tell that story in our way. Now, the cool thing is the people watching it are going to get a completely different version of that character in their head. So that's the magic of storytelling. You don't really know how it's going to, once that file goes over, you have no idea where it's going to take them. So how do we bring a character to life? Sight, sound, taste, feel, smell, balance, mass. Those are those other senses I was talking about.
That's why your character tastes like chocolate.
Ah, excellent. You remember the characters you just brought to life? What I would like you to do is just get out an orange. And start eating it as that character. If that character could eat an orange, okay? I want you to imagine the juice, the smell of the citrus on your fingers, the pith. I want you to imagine that. And so when you're telling a story, always give your characters something to do. Good. See, I love this. She's kind of distracted as she's doing it, which is good. Because that's playing off type. You're actually doing two things at once, which people do all the time.
My character wants to throw it at people.
They're storytellers, they have swords. So, as you're eating that orange, what you just did, right now, feeling and sensing that story, or that orange, when your character comes in, and if that character comes in eating an orange, that's what people are going to key into. They're going to look at that physical gesture, that tech, and if you are feeling it yourself, they're going to feel it. And so if you want to make somebody yawn, what do? You yawn. Oh man! Yawn block! So that's one of our first key tools, is we use our everyday experiences and incorporate them into our stories to make our characters believe. Okay, I'm going to show you a couple of quick things. We've already done get in the skin, crazy sounds, and crazy face. Actually, we haven't done the crazy face. So what I want you to do is, I just want you to start making crazy faces. I want you to stretch your tongue out. And go ahead and rub your nose. And raise your eyebrows. And be smart. Cunning. Goofy. And just let your face try. And you'll notice that there are certain things that we do in life, like when you catch somebody lying, and you say, "Where were you?" You see where I went? My eyes automatically went, up here. Because we're now trying to create something. We're trying to lie. But if you were telling a story and the mother says, "Timmy, where are you?" and you play that kid, your eyes are automatically going up there because everybody says, "Oh, he's getting ready to lie." And so all those little key gestures that we use in our day-to-day lives, you can use them as part of your stories. I have a character who's a vampire. And in the story, he ends up being abducted by aliens who are destroying Earth. And they get him out of his can, and they bring him up onto the deck of the ship, and the alien commander is huge and imposing, and he's just this weedy little Middle European guy of, indeterminate birth. And he's sitting there like this. And the alien looks down at him and says, "Why are you smiling?" Well, it is because I know some things that you do not. I know that you know nothing about vampires. my key gesture for that character is that cigarette. And so when I want to tell that story, I find a key gesture that helps me lock into that character. So one of the things I would like you to do right now is the character that you've been imagining, I want you to find a key gesture. Anybody got a good one? Ah, good one. And that's a great broad gesture. Because when you have a broad gesture like that, that's like, I'm almost coming into the scene at that point. How about you? Do you have a key gesture?
No, nothing's coming to mind.
Okay. What was your character, by the way?
Snow White.
Oh, so what would be Snow White before or after she becomes a princess?
Before.
Okay. So what was Snow White famous for before she became a princess?
Well, I'm thinking of the time that she was with the dwarves.
Okay. So what was Snow White famous for?
Taking care of them, being nurtured.
She was OCD. I'm sorry, nobody is willingly going to clean up after 7 guys. Mentally broken. So, what might be a good OCD Snow White gesture?
I don't know. That's not coming.
Sweeping?
Oh, okay, that's a good one, yeah.
Cleaning? And so when she's in character,
Yeah.
you know, she would be cleaning, always. Because that's all especially back in medieval times, the amount of just labor was backbreaking. So, who else has tell me your character, milady.
Rosamund from George McDonald's The Wise Woman. I actually have it in
No, it's okay, it's okay.
I've been reading it for my book club.
Okay.
But she's just this little girl, little princess, is snobbish, gets everything she wants. She'll just pick things up, play with them, rip them apart, and just throw them away. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So, what would be a key gesture for Rosamund?
I don't know.
She's been taking my ponytail a lot.
Something like that.
Another good one you might try is she would, because she's just this driven character, you would see that maybe in her posture and her body, and so she'd be like, always, you know, getting ready, always looking, always acquiring, always challenging. So that could be. And so what I want you to do is just think in terms of all the different key gestures. It could be posture, it could be what they do. Did you have a key gesture in mind, Rosemary? Oh, who's your character?
James Bond.
Ooh. Now that's it. See, the nice one about the martini is the martini says a lot of different things right there. High or social status, right there. And it also gives you something to do during a story. Whereas if you have a gun, people get nervous about this. And so I'm telling a story. But absolutely. And James Bond, you could reduce that down into a character of, you know, James Bond. Or what was the thing that he did after he ripped open the back of the train? In the last James Bond movie, he lands into the back of the train, and having ripped the back of it off, literally the whole back of the train lands, and as soon as he hits the ground, he adjusts his cuffs. I'm like, classic James Bond. Okay, so there's key gestures and key phrases. So in the case of my vampire, because you know nothing about vampires. There's my key phrase. Because if I'm going to bring myself into that character, pop. Anybody have a key phrase you would have for one of your characters?
Space Force Lizzie, Space Force Lizzie.
That's great. Okay, so now we have multiple characters and we have a problem. Because the big bad wolf is probably not going to narrate the whole story. He's a character in the story. If I'm going to have two characters dialoguing with each other, now we have to have a neutral space and we need to know where to go to. And so, you guys give me 2 fairy tale characters. Just toss one out there.
Ugly stepsister.
Ugly stepsister, that's one.
There's the princess who smiles roses and cries pearls.
Wow, I want to come see your library.
Need a more generic?
No, that, I
You
can,
could be Hans the Hedgehog. I'm gonna stop talking.
no, I love all this stuff, you're just throwing stuff out there, it's like, cries, pearls, and, okay. So, evil stepsister,
Ugly.
oh, I'm sorry, ugly stepsister, she doesn't need to be evil,
Right, just ugly.
she's just ugly. What are you doing? Crying pearls? I saved them, would you like some? You? Wait, are those real pearls? Yes. So what I'm doing is I look here in space to define that character. I've defined her as being taller than the princess because usually when we think princess, we think not Xena. Although you could play against that, which would be wonderful. That would be Brianna from Brianna. I have a thing for Amazons. So, anyhow, but the idea is that I am here, I define my space here. I'm looking at her. And so when I play the character and I want to physically make a space, I take a little step and I look up. And so now we've visually defined those two characters in space. Okay? But you don't need to do that. So if I were, for instance, James Bond, and I was talking to one of his, he was talking to some villain, all I have to do is do this. I don't believe you know why I'm here. Okay, there's my key gesture. I just naturally, boom, I found it, and it's the tie. I don't believe you know why I'm here. And then the response character could be, if I were doing, should I? Yes, you really should. I can, it's just as subtle as just a shift and an eye can define those two characters. Tonight there are going to be two fantastic storytellers, Michael D. McCarty and Bill Howard, two of the best storytellers I know, personal friends, and if you want to see some awesome storytelling, come by and check them out tonight.
9 o'clock.
Yeah, 9 o'clock. But Michael D. McCarty is an explosion on stage. He's a big, loud African-American guy, and when he gets up there, he's like large and in charge, and he owns that stage. Bill Howard is more of a character player, you know, and so he's hopping back and forth between characters. But I saw Sarah Salter, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I gotta run. Emergency.
I saw Sarah Salter, a great storyteller from San Diego. She told a story about an Appalachian rear panther. Oh my God, it was terrifying. She did it all with words and moved her hand once.
That's the way I was trained.
Yeah.
I was trained never to let you.
West Coast tellers tend to be all over the place. I call it the Michael D. McCarty School of Storytelling. East Coast tellers, chair, hand, if that. Italians, Celts tend to be more expressive, Nordic not so much. So, but there are different styles of storytelling. And so you don't necessarily need to be, "Ah," like I am. You could be, once upon a time.
Have we ever been to learn what the vampire knows and Andy doesn't?
That they know nothing about vampires. And so, I'm going to eat you all. You know what? Even if they don't, there's no way that they're going to be able to counter somebody who can turn into a wolf, a bat, or mist. Yeah.
It's hard to fight this.
Yeah. So, so there's being a story. You're telling a story and you're in that story. So I was there and she started to hit me just repeatedly over and over and over. You're being in the story. There's telling a story. Once upon a time, there was, I'm describing something. And then there's performing a story. Once upon a time. There are different modalities and narrator voices that you can use to tell and get your stories out there. So, let's try another exercise here. Have you guys all got a character in mind? Okay, let's do characters at different ages. Okay, so stand up. What would your character be like? And so just find a character from fairy tales or from movies that you like. What would that character be like as a kid? Let's try something really young. And so I'm going to be the big bad wolf as a puppy. All right, go ahead, be that character.
I can't see it anymore.
That was a good try.
Try.
Okay, middle-aged character. You got things to do, places to be. Damn pigs. Okay, now, good. Now, your character is an old person. Little pig left me.
We need to go sit down.
Hey, your head. All right. So notice the differences in your. Okay, go ahead and stop for a second. Notice the differences in your character when you played at different ages. So when you were a little kid, you were fluid. All of a sudden, that fluidity came back because, as we know, kids can be assembled in a million different ways. You know, especially girls as little kids. You know, hey, my arms over here, my legs over here. I'm perfectly comfortable. So that's one thing. Another example is the old person. Automatically, we start going stoop, over. We start making those kind of gestures, right? That's part of the language, the text you get to use. And so you could say, I need a wizard. Okay, one wizard. Let's make him over. Okay, let's make him wise. Oh, beard. Okay. I grew this beard and mustache just for this class, by the way. So that's all part of how we use different parts of our stories. So we're now going to do some storytelling. So the first thing I would like you to do is I'm going to pair you up. I'm going to go A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B. No, wait. Can I get you two to change chairs for a second?
Sure.
Because you know her. So you were A, B, and she gives it to me in sign.
Sorry.
People who do sign amaze me because I'm far too distracted because I'm already talking with my hands. So you were B,
You got it.
A, B, A, B. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is you're going to talk to the person, the A's are going to talk to the B's about one of your favorite dishes, the food you like to eat. And it could be peanut butter, it could be, you know, a favorite Thai food, a favorite drink, whatever that favorite food is. Yes?
Gosh, is this my actuals or?
No,
in
not in character, you personally. Because remember, there's personal stories, folk tales, myths, legends, all that stuff. But remember, everything that you use personally can be used to influence your story. So, A's, tell us about your favorite food. One of the things that we as human beings immediately log on to is food. We love our food. Food porn 24/7 on TV, you know, especially if you're dieting. Oh man, stop showing those damn commercials, you're killing me. So, B's, when the A's started telling you about their food, what happened? What did you notice? What?
You salivate.
Ah, yes. But what about them changed when they started telling you this and telling you about their food?
Her energy level went up.
Excellent. They became animated. It was about something that mattered to them, right? And they were trying to tell you something they loved, so there was an enthusiasm there. What did you like about the way she was describing her food?
She was telling me how it was made, and she was very sticky warm.
Ah, excellent. And what kind of food was he describing?
Chocolate chip cookie.
Oh, yeah, dude, going straight for the food crack. And did you notice any sensations or anything in the way that she was describing the food? Was there any particular thing about the food?
I think she kind of described as all different ingredients, kind of flavors used really well.
Okay. And when she was telling you about her food, did she give you any context?
She did. She told me where it was that you could actually find that kind of food.
He started telling me about fettuccine, if I may. He started telling me about fettuccine Alfredo and how that's one of his favorite dishes, you know, with the creaminess and everything. But look at just amazingly how fast we went into storytelling mode. We were there. Isn't that cool? Okay. We can't just leave it hanging. We got to get closure. Okay, now B's are going to tell the A's about their favorite food.
Can't wait because it's
One of my favorites. So, again, the energy just went right up. Again, this is where we as human beings call on that life experience and throw that into our storytelling. So, what food did she recommend?
Stacy's pita chips.
Okay. Yeah, it's do we have a bag up in your room?
Nobody had to eat Pringles last night.
The tragedy. How about her?
She fixed me a steak that was wonderful, and it sizzled, and she gave me crispy, really, really crispy potatoes next to it, and she could smell it.
Notice how she said that? She fixed me.
Yeah.
Because storytelling is a gift. I gave her this. She shared this. When he told me about his fettuccine, he was sharing something. He was giving me something. See, one of the key things about storytelling is it's a loop. I give my codified information to you. And when I share this information, it's all processed. I'm putting all this seasoning and flavor and everything into the story and giving it to you, and you take it and go, oh, this is delicious. Oh, no, no, no. But you see, the problem is if I don't get that emotive reflection back, all the energy is going one way. And so it doesn't come back. And then you start going, but I just gave you a steak and with crispy hash browns.
No, really.
Oh. So What food? I'm sorry, what food?
Soups.
Ooh.
And specifically a heavy chowder-like soup with corn and veggies and things like that.
So I tell a Nasruddin Hoja story, Hoja Nasruddin, of the soup, where he gets invited to a banquet because he's wearing a beautiful coat, and he dips his sleeves in the soup, and because he's trying to make a point. But when the soup comes in, I bring it around to everybody and say, "What kind of soup is it, my lady?" And she takes a deep breath, takes a deep sniff. "What kind of soup is it, my lady?"
Lint.
And you, my lady, what kind of soup is it?
Corn chowder.
You didn't even breathe, you knew it. Take a deep breath, what is it?
I'm going oyster stew.
Oyster stew. What kind of soup is it?
A hot and sour Thai soup.
Congratulations, you are all absolutely correct. See, that's the beauty of storytelling. So, another thing that you need to know is it lives in the eyes. When we're giving that power back, I told a story for the Ventura Law Enforcement Association, and I kid you not, it scarred me for life. So I'm getting up there and I'm telling a story, and 300 people in that room turned and looked at me and gave me, "Can I see your driver's license and registration, please?" Look, nothing. It was like being in a room full of professional poker players. And I was putting out and putting out and putting out. Nothing was coming back. Oh! So, I'm going to give you a real quick tip for dealing with that. What you do is, first of all, the story lives here in the eyes. Okay? This is your paintbrush. This is your paintbrush. And so let's say I see somebody who's kind of not paying attention, and I look over and I start talking to that person. And while they're talking, I'm actually getting everybody else to focus on that person. And now I have her attention. She's looking at me, and we're emoting, and we're agreeing, aren't we? I'm shaking my head, and we're agreeing. And then what I'll do is, now that I have that tie, I'll look over to her. And because I saw her looking off. And so I'm going to use that little, I'm going to put her off balance and make her focus on me. And she was looking away, now she's looking at me. And I'm going to nod, and you're going to agree with me as well. And so what I'm doing is I'm pulling in one person after another. And as I tell my story, my head is going from left to right, and I'm establishing a rhythm. And so when you're telling a story, your eyes are kind of like your laser. What you're doing is you're reaching out to the people in the audience, and you're establishing that connectivity. And then if you have somebody who's not giving you any energy, what you do is you walk over to them and pause. You say, and I'm not saying you're not giving the energy, but I stand there and I pause, and I try to find something that we can both agree on. And so, for instance, if you're in a class, and you say, how many times have you had somebody contact you, and they say, "Oh my God, my computer won't do X." And the first thing you say, "Have you tried rebooting?" Right? Now we have an agreement. Now I've brought this person in on my side. And what I do is I look at this person, I say, and so in the IT field, when we're working with people like this, the first thing we need to do is we need to say, how is this impacting your life? Right? That's the first thing we have to ask. How is this impacting our life? That's how you're doing it. You need to make it relevant to people. You need to involve them, and if you have somebody who's not giving you the energy, you go up and say, "You had a rough night last night, didn't you? You were out partying all night, weren't you?" And they'll go, "No." Oh, well, I was. So, your eyes. But here's another cool thing. Not only can your eyes do this, but your voice can do this too. So, if I, for instance, start talking to, it's going to be a little hard to do this in a room like this, but you get the idea. If I start talking to you, once upon a time, there was a man who played the flute, and he played it beautifully. And when he played that flute, everything in the world would stop and listen to that flute. He was a braggart. He was a fool. And what I'm doing is I'm using my voice to paint the audience. And I can, in a large room, I can literally focus my voice at some person and get them to pay attention to me just by using my voice and using my diaphragm. I have a storytelling call that will go about 1.5 minutes. Nobody can keep up with me on that. I'll just, story, and I'll just go and go and go and go and go and go and go. Because I don't have much in the way of a way to bring people in, but my voice, because I'm a storyteller, has become one of my tools. And one of the great things about your voice is you can use all sorts of little tricks. You can start playing with your diction. You can start playing with your volume. You can start making it rise and fall and up and down. You can use the resonance of the room. You can use all these tricks as a storyteller. Isn't that cool? All right, so I want you to just, all of you say red leather, yellow leather. Go ahead. Red leather.
Yellow leather.
Now do it soft. Okay, louder.
Red leather, yellow leather.
Ah, notice that when you went louder, you almost sounded angry. And so that's one of the things we can play in context. So I want you to say red leather, yellow leather, louder, but this time happy.
Red leather, yellow leather.
Ah, did you notice the difference? That red leather, yellow leather. And those are all tools you can use to help build your character. Let's see. So the importance of eyes, making eye contact. The importance of eyes when you're telling stories. I'm looking up here, she's looking down there. I'm using that to define my space. I'm using my eyes to pull myself over to a person. Then I look over here to bring that person back into the story so they'll pay attention to me. And those are all techniques. I'm sorry, I'm just picking on her because she's wonderful. So, let's see here. Now we're going to do
something fun.
We don't have much time left. How much time do we have left?
15.
Okay, we're gonna cram through this part. Guess what? You're gonna be telling stories. Anybody need chocolate? Anybody need a glass of water?
These ones are not keepers, right?
Yeah, these are not keepers. If anybody absolutely, definitely needs one, I can send you the PDF. This is what I recommend for, oh, this one's got some schmutz on it, a little ink or something, sorry. I hand them out. It may be chocolate. Huh? I'm not forgetting you, sir. You use chocolate chip cookies, which is just an evil trick. Oh, yes. All right, those are 2 sides, so freak out. All right, everybody got one? All right, so your goal, you intrepid storytelling adventurers, is you are going to find a story in here, and you're going to learn it, and you're going to tell it. So take a moment, just kind of leaf through, find a character or story that talks to you, and we're going to tell it. Don't worry too much about memorizing it right now. Now, I have to tell you, one of the things that I run into all the time as a professional storyteller is I tell people, hey, I'm a professional storyteller, and they say, oh, you read books to kids. Sadly, storytelling is not reading books to kids. That is recitation. And you can be a great reciter, and you can be telling a story and using the book as a prompt. But if you're reading a book to kids like this, then it's not traditional storytelling. Okay? Storytelling is making eye contact, telling a story. Now, you can tell a story in a variety of mediums, but when we get down to the root is person to person, book goes tossed away. But we're going to get into the skin of our story. So everybody pick a story. And A's and B's. A, I want you to read that story to B. Okay, you just read yours. Yeah, go ahead and read it. Okay. Has everybody finished their story? Okay. A couple rules about this particular class. We do not give critiques. Critiques get shot in the head in this room. What we do is we give appreciations. And if the other person asks for something, we can offer a suggestion. So, not that you guys are going to go, oh, that sucked, that was horrible. I'm sending it back to England. But one of the best ways to help a fellow storyteller out is give them appreciations about the things that you liked about the story and say, what would you like me to tell you about how I felt about the story? What things do you want to ask me about as a listener? Being a story listener is just as critical as being a good storyteller. Okay? So, and that was the A's telling a story to a B, correct?
Mm-hmm.
B, all the B's, think of one great thing that you just heard in that story as they read it to you. Okay? So what was a great thing about the way she told that story?
More enthusiastic about telling it. That's the great thing.
By the way, I love that. More and more. This is very...
I'm from this
Yes.
side.
Excellent. What did you like about the way she told the story?
I like her enunciation and the fact that she was outraged at the beginning and then the resolution was very happy.
She came into it with a feeling. That's beautiful. What did you like?
His tone went up and down and ended up expressing some of the humor.
Oh, excellent. Nice. Humor is hard to do.
I looked like her dramatic gestures, and she also distinguished the dialogue between the two character voices. She made them distinct.
Yeah, I was watching her out of the corner of my eye, and she definitely belongs in the Michael D. McCarty School of Storytelling.
Is that out here?
Yes. What did you like?
Oh, her sense of pacing was fantastic.
Ooh.
The story built to a joke at
Uh-huh.
the end, and her setup was really good. And as she kind of built it, she paused at the right places, so I would anticipate what was coming next.
One of the things I loved about the way he told the story is he told me the title. He said, this is the title. And just the way he said it is like, and now we're having a story. I'm like, yay! And the other thing was he had a beautiful meter. It just boom, 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 boom. I'm like, I'm going for a run. So now the B's are going to tell their story to the A's. And B's, I want you to do something special as you tell your story. I want you, as you're reading the story, when you look back up and make eye contact, try to tell the story with your eyes as well. Think about it. It is a little weird, but give it a shot. Okay, go! Think of a story. Or actually, no.
How dare you attack me? Tiger looked at him in amazement. Nonsense. You are not the way I am. Great
Flowers
team.
turn their
I
seasons.
Tiger Bound, so great
Sing the life of your servant who has us now scarred and gone.
Is that
Actually, follows my wings.
I mean, but I just.
Like what you first teenager, you lost job.
By the way, you guys rock. I just want to put that out there. You guys all rock. I love when people are telling stories and just music tonight.
I just do it by myself.
Okay. Now, you notice that she finished up last, right?
Oh.
No, that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. Stories, by the way, as you get up to tell stories, if you're ever doing a storytelling event and you're one of the storytellers, the worst crime in the world for a storyteller, don't go overtime. Okay? Because stories go and expand. That's their nature. A professional storyteller, a person who's on their game, knows how long their stories are, knows their audience, but knows how to not use up all the oxygen in the room. Okay? Nothing wrong about what you were doing, trust me.
And how long did I go?
No, but the reason I pointed them out is, listen to her again. Show me the way you were listening to her. Keep looking at me. She was an active listener. She turned her body to listen.
And if
Her
she
whole-
had, I would turn her.
Right? Well,
I had decided that before I began.
yes. All the people who just told stories, what did you like about your listener? What kind of feedback were you getting from them?
Enraptured.
So, but describe it to me. What was she doing?
Smiling, her eyes were sparkling.
Excellent. What did you like about the way she was looking and listening to you?
The more I can see her react viscerally, the more excited I am.
And you?
Oh, I was even telling a story.
Yeah.
She would look surprised, and she would kind of laugh at the funny parts, just like encouragement to keep going.
So she was giving you that feedback, that emotion, okay? It's just as important to be a good listener as it is to be a good teller. Okay, so we're going to go around, and you're going to tell me what you thought of her, some things you liked about her story.
Well, she didn't rush it.
That's
And
wonderful.
That gave me time to absorb it and to hear it in a different way.
The power of the pause in a story can make a huge difference. It can change the moment, the mood, the pacing, the timing. And so if I just sit there and look at her for a moment, there's a connection, and everybody else focuses on us. And you have such a great vocal range.
Thank you.
What did you like? I'm sorry.
I listened to her.
Yeah.
She has this really cute face when she tells the story. it sort of sparkles. And she took on the characters, but she did it with her mouth and her nose, which was really cool.
Guess what? Most of the story, everybody's looking here. So if she's got that palette going, she's already ahead of the game.
Yay.
Great observation. What did you like?
I listened to her, and I like her story. Didn't have any like characters speaking, but there were points in the story where there was like an excitement moment, and she conveyed that really well. Like her voice, it is the sun, and like her face would kind of light up, and her tone of voice, and I could tell it was something she didn't. I don't think you really were doing on purpose, but you were excited about that part of the story, and it came out really well.
Excellent. And you?
I really liked that she seemed like she was almost listening to the story as she was telling it in the same way. Like her voice would carry the momentum of the story, but her eyes would laugh at it, so it was a funny story. And then there was a punchline, her eyes would laugh, and her voice would hold the same cadence.
Oh, excellent.
And so it was fun too, it was like a participation, we're both participating in the story, instead of her just delivering it.
Nice.
Oh, I like so many things. When she started the story, I could see her like preparing, and so I was like prepared, like she adjusted her glasses. It was like, ready.
Clark Kent moment.
And then immediately she jumped into character, and there were 3 different characters, and they're all very distinct with like the way she carried herself and had her voice. And the first character was very intense and nervous, and the second character was a little more calm.
Wow, water twin powers activated. Nicely done. Form of storyteller, shape of mythic archetype.
And then when she got to the end, the story, like the written part of the story was over, but she did one more character reaction. That was great.
He told the story again to me, the same story, and when he told the story, I noticed just how nice and resonant and melodic his voice is. He's got one of those voices that would be a natural for like book on tape. You know, and it's like, aww. So, brave Sir Robin.
2 hours.
Huh?
2 minutes.
Okay, you guys want to go just a little bit long?
Oh, yes.
Just a tiny bit? Okay. Put the papers down. Find somebody you have not told the story to, and just stand up. You're going to stand up, and you're going to find somebody, and you're going to set yourself up in couples. Or would you like me to just arrange it for you? Probably faster.
Yeah.
Okay. So you two, you and her, you with him, you two. You guys already know each other, right?
Yes.
You two,
I'm Jason.
and you're with me. All right. Okay. Line yourself up like this. So, okay, everybody, so 2 people, you know, just like this. There you go, come over here. All right, and you two. All right, cool. So everybody on that side of the room is going to tell their story. The story you just did. Go.
So, there's a tiger forest in the middle of the forest, and the fox cries out, like, how dare they jump on between the forest? And the tiger paws.
And in turn, I know I'm a man of blue, I don't know, and because you're not as knowledgeable as you, but at that point, I didn't know she was so underage. Well, great to like, no, I never learned.
That's a recollection.
You already made me that skill now.
All right, can you finish? Put your hands up, or just put a hand up. Okay. Are you finished? Okay, go ahead and put your hands down. So,
I'm honest.
Then the other person.
no, I just want to get everybody finished before we start off.
We told the same story.
Excellent. Okay. All right, no. Come here. Over here.
Okay.
All right, good. All right, so, now, people on that side of the wall, I'm sorry,
Switch.
yeah, you two switch, there you go. People on that side of the wall are going to tell their story. Go.
Oh, I didn't know. I was right the first time. I just told the story.
can now. Right now.
Well, no,
Is everybody finished? So, yeah, if you're finished, because I can't tell between ah and ha. So, everybody take a seat. Because I don't want to throw you guys off schedule, because I know you guys want to go into other things. I have 4 minutes. I'm 4 over.
Only 4.
Okay. So, how did that feel? Wasn't that fun? And you told stories to people you don't even know, right?
it is better standing up, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, when I tell stories, it's hard for me to not know. Stories helped form civilizations. Storytelling is one of the most natural ways we as human beings communicate. If you want to get an idea, a thought, an emotion, if you want to make a difference, learn how to use storytelling to change the world. When you are hearing stories and you feel that there's something wrong or toxic in that story, use your storytelling powers to take it apart. Figure out what's wrong with that story. Every culture has storytellers. Shawnees, bards, Scots, gleemen, troubadours, you name it. The fact that you are in this room learning to tell stories, learning the parts of stories, how stories come together, how dialogue works, you are learning the big tool set. You are learning the Lego blocks of how you make everything awesome. Thank you guys very much for being here.
For a moment, for those of you who are writers and came in talking about some of your writer goals, he'll write something, I have a tendency to edit it. But sometimes he doesn't hand me the paper, he reads it out loud, and he gets his editing done before it got to my pen. So if you're a writer who is struggling with something, find a friend with whom you can read it out loud. Because he looked at me and he goes, I'm so glad I read that out loud. That's where his toolkit is strong, reading it out loud. You catch the problems when you turn it into the out loud story. And you guys all just experienced the out loud story. Different sitting, different with paper, different standing, different without the paper. So those of you who are coming in looking for ways to fix your writing, as an editor who watches writers do that, try reading it out loud. It does fix a lot.
If you guys have any questions, I'm going to be here at the con until Monday. Come to the storytelling thing tonight. That's going to be awesome. And it has been my honor. I would ask of you, if there was something personal that you shared with somebody here, please do not take it out there and discuss it to anybody else unless that other person gives you permission to do so. Because when we share storytelling, we're dealing with the squicky parts of our lives. And what we want to do is we want to make certain that we are supportive in creating a safe space so that when we leave here, we go out and we do the awesome. Okay? I need the story booklets back, but I I will happily send you a PDF so that you may practice these at home. Okay? Everybody please sign up on the mailing list if you want me to contact you.
Where did you learn her train her songs?
Yes.